Well, g'day, and welcome back again to Jiao Ching. And today, wow, we're still out here. This is number 3 video today that we've recorded. Last 2, we've just walked around the food street around by the lake, right the way around through Paifong Square, down through Paifong Park. For this one, we're going to sit down. We've got the camera on a tripod, and it's too hot to be walking around any longer. But today we're talking religion and my beliefs. What do I believe? What do I not believe? This comes from a comment. Came on one of the videos we did last year, maybe 18 months ago, over in Yunfu when we were walking through the temples. I happened to mention that I'm not religious. And somebody made a comment, and I haven't gone through and found the comment, but they were questioning, well, if I'm not religious, what do I believe in? To which I'd say I probably believe in most of the same things that you believe in. Just not that. I believe in being kind to people, helping others, being generous with your time to for whatever, learning, science, all that stuff I believe in. Anything that can be substantiated. I am a fairly skeptical person, skeptical in the sense, not skeptical that I just don't believe anything, but skeptical in the sense that I'm not going to just believe stuff because somebody tells me stuff. I like to go and dig on my own. Not necessarily about everything. Some things I'm happy to take people's word on. I may or may not agree with them. But if it's a subject I'm interested in, I generally go and do further research and try and put myself in a position where I can back up anything that I do believe, anything that I do follow. And so far, religion hasn't been able to give me that sort of confidence to believe any of them. So far, if I was going to be religious in any way, on my limited understanding at the moment, I would probably pick Taoism, because after talking to a Taoist monk in Yunfu about what Taoism is, I think they're the most credible religion I've ever seen. They believe in being one with nature, looking after the planet, looking after your natural environment, looking after the people around you, being friendly, being helpful, all that sort of stuff. No supernatural beliefs. Although I was told also that different parts, as with most religions, you have different people within that religion believe different things. So there are different forms of Taoism, but the one he was talking about, I'd go, yeah, that's for me. Except I don't need to be in a group to believe these things. I believe these things without needing to be in a group, so I don't need that religion. So, as I mentioned in the previous video, I watch on YouTube quite a bit of religious stuff. Specifically things like the Atheist Experience. Now, they're the longest one I've been watching. I've been watching them for at least 15 years now, probably close to 20 years. As I mentioned in the previous videos, these guys, they're an organization, I think it's the Atheist something of Austin, the Atheist Community of Austin. And they've been presenting this show they must be getting on for 25 years now. Started off, as I mentioned, public access television program. They moved to YouTube, or started putting clips up on YouTube. Now the show is run on YouTube. And it is basically a call-in show. People can call in, ask questions, explain, try and justify their beliefs in whatever religion they believe in. Mostly it's Christian callers because it's an American show, but now on YouTube, as it's going more worldwide, they get more Muslim callers, more various other bits and pieces. Some are what I would call sort of softball Christians, who are sort of, I'd say, almost more culturally Christian. They don't necessarily believe everything that is in the Christian religion. Others are very, very hardcore, very, very, what's the name for them? Fundamentalist, and believe everything, which they're the ones that I love the calls with them, because they have all these beliefs, but they can't justify any of them. Like I say, I've had at least 15 years of watching these guys. I've watched hundreds, probably thousands of people call in trying to justify their religion. All the way from amateurs who have never really thought about their religious beliefs before, they just believe they're true, right through to, they've had professional apologists on the program calling in. And all of them fail. Every single one of them. None of them have anything that is convincing to me. I see religion and religious beliefs as sort of a twofold thing. One, they came about through people trying to explain the world around them when they didn't have the scientific knowledge, the scientific background, all the evidence that as a species we've gathered over the last, couple of hundred years in particular, since science really became a structured thing. So they were trying to explain things that they had no ability at the time to understand. So where does lightning come from? Well, it's the gods being angry or whatever, Zeus or whoever else throws down lightning from different cultures. Earthquakes, storms. There's still people in America who believe that hurricanes and tornadoes are caused because God's angry because there's gay people out there. I mean, for God's sake, we know how weather systems work. We know how the atmosphere works. We know why these storms happen, but apparently it's because there's gay people around. Just ridiculous stuff. We have people still who will not take their sick children to the doctor and instead prefer to pray. And their children die because of this. It is unbelievable. I need a drink. It is really, really hot out here. I struggle with all religion. I don't believe there's a God out there. I would be very, very close to saying I believe there is no God out there, which is two very different things. If you're not sort of in these discussions, which I wouldn't have known the difference back before I sort of started watching this type of content, but not believing in a God is different to believing there is no God. It is much like, if we look at science at the moment, we've got string theory. I don't believe in string theory because I don't believe it's been proven. But I don't believe string theory is not correct. I just don't believe we have enough evidence to believe it yet. And that would sort of be soft atheism. There might be a God, there might not. I don't believe it until you can show me the evidence for that God. And that's very, very much where I am, although I would say I'm much closer to believing there is no God. Or if there is no God that interacts with us. I mean, so some of my problems with religion. You hear these people say, this is God's plan. When something bad happens, this is God's plan. We're not meant to understand it. And yet these same people go and pray for things to get better. Why? If this is God's plan, why are you trying to change his mind? Or if you're going to pray for something that God was going to do anyway, Why are you praying? It makes no sense to me whatsoever. Absolutely none. When people do things that are considered miraculous, for example, the plane crash that crashed into the Hudson, and the pilot managed to land this plane on the water and everybody survived. I don't even think there are any major injuries, maybe some minor injuries, but everybody survived. And all these people were thanking God. I was thanking the pilot. I thought the pilot was bloody brilliant. If God didn't want these people to die, why did he put them in a plane that was going to crash into a river? It's just stupid. It's absolutely ridiculous. The pilot is the one who should be getting thanked. When, people are saved from diseases that are, it's really, really rare for a cure to work, and people are saved, people thank God. No, go and thank the bloody doctors who did the work, who probably worked really, really hard, studied for years to be able to do what they do. And then when they do something really good that they should be given the credit for, oh, thank you, God. Piss off. That's just ridiculous. If you're watching up there, sorry about that, but you haven't provided me any evidence. Show me something. But you won't, because you never do. These kinds of things that people say. Another great one that is a regular thing that people say when they call into the Atheist Experience is, look at the trees, look at the this and that, and how all of life fits together, and it must be some sort of planned out thing, which is just looking at things all backwards. It's not planned out, it's the way things turned out. A really great analogy that is used regularly is, I think it was from Douglas Adams, the author of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And the analogy he used was, imagine, there's been a big rainstorm and there's a puddle on the ground. And this puddle becomes sentient, can suddenly think for itself. And this puddle looks around itself and goes, wow, look at this hole in the ground. It's perfectly shaped for me. This hole must have been created just for me. No, the puddle filled the hole that was there in much the same way that life and everything on Earth has developed in a way that will survive here. It has nothing to do with being created. It has everything to do with, this is how the Earth is, and things evolved to be able to live in this environment. The really funny one that I laugh at is people say, oh, the universe was so perfectly created for us. Really? The universe was perfectly created? We're in one tiny, tiny little speck of the universe, and there's a hell of a lot of this planet that we live on that is not available for us. Under the water, we can't live there. To say that the universe is perfectly created, it's like an infinitesimally small amount of the universe that humans can survive in. So no, the universe wasn't created for us. We evolved to live in the space that we live in. And that's been borne out over and over again by science. Things with evidence not being proven by a book that was written by, Iron Age or Bronze Age peasants who had no idea about science, no idea how to do science. It is stories trying to explain things. Another really common argument you hear is, without religion, we can't be moral. Really? Is that right? Well, let's have a look at some of the different societies around the world. America, quite a problem with crime. 1/5 of the world's population, 20% of the world's prison population. So how moral is a country where the majority of people are Christian? Doesn't seem to hold true. If you look at the prison population, I believe that in the prisons in America, America's got, I don't know, I think it's about 15 or 20% would say they are either atheist or none, having no religious affiliation. And yet I believe the prison population is under 2% atheist. So by far the majority of people in prisons are religious. It's and then you look at countries like China, like Japan, like some of the Scandinavian countries, very, very much more atheist countries, and lower prison rates, lower crime rates, just doing much, much better as a society. Another really common, thing you hear is, Stalin was atheist, Mao was atheist, Hitler was atheist. Stalin and Mao, probably atheist. I believe they're probably accurate. Hitler, I don't think you can say that. A lot of the Nazi uniforms had a lot of religious iconography involved in their things. They were, I believe, very Catholic. In fact, the Catholic Church, there's been a lot of connections between the Nazis and the Catholic Church at the time, Vatican City. There's some pretty incredible stuff there that the Catholic Church probably would like us all to forget or not learn about. But it's out there. So, Hitler, no, not atheist. Well, maybe he was atheist, but the organization that he led, definitely not atheist. As for Stalin and Mao, and I don't know, this is a problem with this stuff. I've heard, I've been ingrained with all this stuff that they killed millions of people. But having now lived in China and seeing the kind of distortion of the truth that is out there consistently, I now question those narratives. But let's say that they are true. Let's say that Mao and Stalin killed, 10 million people each, and they were atheist. But they didn't do that in the name of atheism. They did it for other reasons. Atheism had nothing to do with that. You can't tell me that if they'd been Christian or Muslim or anything else that they wouldn't have done what they did, because there's plenty of examples of, the Crusades, the witch hunts, the discrimination against native populations around the world that religious groups have done. The religion makes no difference. There's another really great saying, and I don't know where this comes from. It's one that is often repeated on the Atheist Experience, but I can't remember who it is that originally said it to credit it to. But it is, good people will do good things. Bad people will do bad things. But it takes something like religion to get good people to do bad things. And I think that's really accurate. When people have these fundamental beliefs and they believe that they have a God on their side that is telling them that this is how they should behave, then they will do bad things, even when they are good people. It's one thing I love about being here in China. I mean, I know a lot of people out there don't believe this, but China does have freedom of religion. You are welcome to believe whatever you want. you're welcome to go to church, go to a mosque however often they go to mosques, I don't know, but every Sunday go to church. But you're not allowed to come out in the street and try and convert people and stuff. It's, you will get talked to by the police if you're doing that. That is not allowed. You're not allowed to interfere with other people's lives. If people want to become religious, let them do it on their own. I remember being in a market, the market down behind my school, one day picking up some pork, and a guy come up to me and he's pointing up at the sky. Chinese guy, couldn't understand what he was saying, but he's pointing up at the sky. And I'm looking at him go, what? And he's trying to say stuff to me, blah, 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 blah. I'm going, no idea what you're talking about, mate. And then he did something else. I can't remember what else he did. But then he had a necklace on, and he pulled it out, and it was a Christian cross. And he's going like this. And then I realised, oh, this guy's a bloody religious nut job. And I just went, nah, so go away, not interested. Absolutely no interest in any of your religious garbage. And, I could have gone and reported him to the police. He may well have got in trouble, I don't know, but because you're not allowed to do that here. You're allowed to believe what you want to believe, but you're not allowed to go and, what's the word, proselytise. These street preachers and stuff that you see in other countries. I remember watching a video, an American guy I think he was in Brisbane in Australia. Or was it, no, it might have been, I can't remember, Brisbane or Sydney. He was on a bus or a tram or a subway, public transport, and he was stood up there with his Bible and he was trying to preach to everybody on the whatever it was, on the, let's say subway. And man, he got shouted down and basically kicked off of this thing. I was so proud of my fellow Australians for the way they stood up against this clown. Guy come all the way from America to try and preach to us poor convict nation, I guess. It was hilarious, but he got shut down quick. So, yeah, I love having conversations about religion. I find them fascinating. I find the reasons people believe to be fascinating. I actually worked with a guy back in Australia who was, I think he was Seventh-day Adventist. I might have the church wrong, but it was one of them sort of the smaller Christian branches, Mormon or one of those. And I used to love sitting down and talking to him about religion. And he'd learnt very early on, don't try and convert me, because if you try and push your stuff on me, I'm going to push right back, and I'm going to push back bloody hard. But I used to love sitting down and chatting to him. He was a really, really nice guy, like genuinely one of the nicest guys you could ever hope to meet. But I couldn't believe what he believed. But I do believe that learning about it's why I like going to temples and stuff here, because learning about the religious past of whatever country you're in will help you understand that country's culture, that country's history. It's, even if you're not religious, it's still a big part of who we are. And I think it's important to acknowledge this. I absolutely disagree with having, I spent a couple of years in primary school at a Catholic school. And we used to have a church service every week. And, religious classes. And it wasn't really religious classes. It was Catholic. It was trying to push those beliefs on. I never believed them back, even back then as a kid. And we had a nun teaching us. I always thought it all sounded like bullshit to me. I was too shy as a kid. I'd love to be able to go back and be that kid again and actually push back on some of this stuff that we were told. I wish I'd had the guts not to just sit there and take it. But I've never been able to bring myself to believe this stuff. I remember, so being a Catholic school that we went to, every week, I think it might have been a Wednesday morning, we'd go and have this church service. We had a church connected to our school. And during the service, you know, all the Catholics go up and get their bread and wine, which was a little cracker and a cordial. And they'd all go, you know, everyone would line up to go up and get this, and I'd line up too. And I did this for probably a year and a half. And one day, after we'd been there for, you know, coming up on 2 years, like I say, probably a year and a half, I'm in line to go up and get the cracker and the cordial, because it was good stuff. Who doesn't like a biscuit and a drink during church? One of the nuns came up to me and said, have you been baptized? And I said, I don't know, I don't think so. I couldn't have actually been sure. I was a baby at the time. I wouldn't know, I don't remember. But I think I probably said no, because I probably did know that I hadn't been baptized. And she pulled me out of the line and said, well, you can't have the communion if you're not baptized. Well, they're all getting it, what's this? And then she said to me, don't worry, we'll get it organised and we'll get you baptized, you know, next Sunday at church or something. But she said, you know, I can't remember if it was next Sunday or in a couple of weeks or whatever. And I was like, no, you bloody won't. I didn't say this, but I was thinking it in my head. No, you bloody won't. I'm not being indoctrinated into your bloody club. And within a few days after that, we were out of that school and we were going to a public school. Now, I'd always figured that my mother had heard that whether I'd told her or she'd heard somewhere else, maybe the school had rung her up and said, we have to organise this baptism. I'd always figured that that was why she pulled us out of this school. Until, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I was speaking to my mother and I asked her about this. And I found out the reason we actually got pulled out was because we had friends. This is in Collie in Western Australia. We had friends who went to the same school and they were quite a poor family. The father was an ex-bikie, you know, probably drug dealer and stuff. He ran a motorcycle repair shop, rode Harleys, tattoos, big beard. You know, just not the Catholic looking sort of person. And apparently everybody in the school just looked down on these kids because of who their father was and because they were poor and stuff. So it became too much for my mother. I think just got sick of the hypocrisy, get the word right. And that was the reason we were actually pulled out. For years I'd been under the belief that they'd threatened to baptise us, so we were pulled out because my mother wasn't interested. But I'd never actually found out the truth. But yeah, I refuse to be baptised into anybody's little club unless they can prove their club is worth being in. And as far as I'm concerned, there isn't a church out there worth being in. A few years back, we had a Royal Commission in Australia looking into the behaviour of the churches regarding, I don't actually want to say the words because that might get flagged on YouTube and put restrictions on the video, but let's call it misdealing with children. Dealing with children in a way that children shouldn't be dealt with. And pretty much every church, every form of religion in Australia, whether it was Baptists or Catholics or Protestants or whoever else, were all found to be involved in this behaviour. And not only the priests being involved in committing the crimes, but then the church elders going right up to the Vatican in the case of the Catholics and to the top of the other branches of other different belief systems, all covering this stuff up, not taking it to the police, which, as far as I'm concerned, if you're not taking this stuff to the police, then you're as bad as the criminal. There's a song by Tim Minchin, if you haven't seen it, Tim Minchin, the Pope song. Go and look it up. It really sums up my thoughts on this stuff pretty well. And you know, we've seen this stuff, this has happened everywhere. Throughout Africa, the Irish had a very similar investigation into churches in Ireland. This happened in England, throughout Europe, throughout North America, everywhere. People have been mistreated. We have the stolen generation in Australia, the indigenous population, and the way they were treated. Kids dragged away from their families because they needed to be indoctrinated into the Christian way of life and not live by their own customs and their own beliefs. You know, it's disgusting the way people were treated. So no, I can't. So let's just finish up here. In terms of religious belief, you know, gods and stuff, I can't believe any of them. If you've got no actual real world evidence, then you fail. If you're using the Bible to prove the Bible, you fail. Just because the Bible says something doesn't mean it's true. If you've got no other sources to back up what the Bible says, you fail. I rely on evidence, and I think we should. As our scientific knowledge has grown, our spaces for God have diminished. And, you know, gods used to be responsible for everything. And as we learn more and more, suddenly God's not responsible for that. So, yeah, I see no need for a God. I see no need for these beliefs anymore. I fully support people in believing what they want to believe. If your religious belief gives you comfort and helps you think about things and helps you get through life, that's great, you know, for you. But when you start pushing your garbage on other people, then you're over the line and you deserve nothing but contempt. The one thing that I've heard plenty of stories of, so back to the Atheist Experience, people calling in, kids calling in, you know, 16, 17-year-olds who come out as either gay or as not believing the religion that their parents believe in and being kicked out of home and disowned by their families is just disgusting. And yeah, I can't be a part of any world that allows that sort of, you know, if there's a God out there and he allows this to happen, he's a disgusting piece of shit and I want no part of him. You might convince me that this God is true, but you're not going to convince me that he's worthy of worship unless he shows that he's worthy of worship. And if you believe that all the stuff that's happened in the Bible is true, you know, if a woman is raped by a man, then that man should be forced to marry the woman. What? You expect a woman to marry her rapist? You know, if your children are unruly, take them to the edge of town and stone them to death. Really? And so many more stories that, you know, if they are accurate to God's things, condoning slavery, you know, if these things are accurate to what God commits to, then you might be able to convince me with evidence that this God is true, but you're not going to convince me that he's worthy of worship. No chance in the world. But yeah, that's a very, very broad overview of sort of my view on this stuff. It's not a video I ever really wanted to make, but I got this comment, like I say, about 18 months ago. I can't even bother going finding the comment. I remember the overall gist. And while I've never really had the urge to make this video, it's been nagging at the back of my brain ever since. So I figure hopefully we do this and it's out of here and I can start thinking about other things for a change. So yeah, if you've enjoyed this, like, share, subscribe, if you're a fundamentalist Christian watching my channel and you're really, really offended by the things that I've said, unsubscribe. I don't mind. If my thoughts cause you to be that upset, don't watch me anymore. Like I say, you're willing to believe what you want to believe. And I'll listen to religious arguments, but if you're not willing to do the same the other way, unsubscribe. I'm not going to be offended. I'm not interested in having people follow me who are just going to follow me because they want to get angry or something. But yeah, like, share, subscribe. Questions or comments, hit us down there in the comment section. And if there's anything you would like to learn about life here in China, in Guangdong, in Jiaqing, again, down there in the comment section, you come up with a good idea for a video, we'll go away, do the research, make a video just for you so that you can learn what you want to learn. Once again, because I always forget this, Facebook, a Scot in China, look up the group, come and get involved. Like I said in the previous video, I tend to, if I come across stories about things happening in China, I tend to post them in YouTube. Some of them are fun little stories. Some are about things that are happening in China, development, technology, stuff like that, infrastructure. And so yeah, stuff that I don't necessarily have the ability to do myself, but they're interesting little things. But for now, thanks for watching, everybody. Stay safe, and we will see you all in the next one. Cheers.